What's up, everybody? Welcome back to High Temp Gaming. Got a really cool video for you. So if you just bought a bunch of parts for your computer, don't know what to do with them, don't worry about that. We're going to help you get that thing up and running. We're going to show you how to put that PC together. All coming up next. Alright guys, so let's get started on today's builds. So for today's build, we're going to go quick step-by-step guide on how to put your PC together and get it up and running so you can start running your PC. So for today's build, we've got a couple different parts. So it's okay if you don't have these same exact parts. It's going to be very similar processes. So we're going to make it really easy for you to understand. For the motherboard and the processor, I've already been testing this PC for the last couple days. I did a couple videos the last 2 days on just really pushing the performance on, at least for the graphics card, and just trying to see the, basically its performance on this particular build. Didn't overclock the processor, and the reason I didn't overclock the processor, even though I could have slightly overclocked this, because I have the stock cooler that it comes with, which are really fine. It's okay, you could actually overclock them a little bit, but I really didn't want to start overclocking the processor. I just really want to do more with the graphics card than anything. For the processor, we're going with the Ryzen 5 1600. I'm going with the Ryzen 5 1600 because for a $400 build in 2020, it's still a really good processor. It's a 6-core 12-thread, and it's a 3.2 gigahertz and a 3.6 gigahertz precision boost, right? But it's unlocked, so you could definitely overclock it. I would definitely suggest, if you want to in the future overclock it, just put a better cooler on it, and you're going to be perfectly fine. You could do that. For RAM, we've got 8 gigs of DDR4 3000 megahertz RAM Patriot Viper. Went with the all black. I like it because it's going to look really nice with the motherboard that we're going with the B450 AORSM. It's by Gigabyte. Really cool because these are, I got his 3000 desktop ready. Didn't have to really go that route. Nonetheless, I bought it, and a lot of the new ones are actually coming 3000 ready, so it's pretty cool in the future. If you ever want to upgrade it to a 3000 series, you can just plug it right into it, and you'll have no issues. So for the operating system, going with a 120 gigabyte SSD and going with a 500 gigabyte WD. So for the graphics card, this is going to be obviously different for your choice and the build that you want to do, but for this particular build, to keep it at a $400 budget, I chose to go with the RX 570 XFX. You can find them brand new, $120, $119. In many cases, you'll find them for $100 if you look hard enough. Sometimes you'll find rebates, or you can find them on the eBay. In the eBay market, find a good, secondhand used one, and you can probably find them for $65, $70 if you look hard enough. But this is the graphics card we're going with. It's a 4 gigabyte graphics card. It's really nice, and it's going to power this PC up and give us, really good graphics that we're looking for in this budget. Last but not least, the power supply. I went with a good old 500 bronze certified power supply. BR, really good. It's not going to draw nowhere near the power that this is going to offer. But I always like to have a little bit extra power just in case. And when you're looking for a power supply, just make sure it's bronze certified, and you should be good to go. So let's get this thing put together. I just want to make a quick statement on explaining when I'm putting the processor on the motherboard. Since I already have this on a bench, since I've been testing it, I'm going to refer back to an old video so you can see how to put the processor on your motherboard. It's super easy. And then we'll go from there. All right, guys, so when you want to set up your motherboard, pull your motherboard out of the box. You're going to get it out of the static bag that it's in, and you could actually put it right on top of your the box itself, because it's not really going to transfer anything. You should be fine, and you're not plugging anything in at this point electronically. For your CPU, you'll see an arrow that points down. If you look at your motherboard, you'll also find an arrow, and you just want to line those up. Lift up the retainer bar and put it in. Make sure it's nicely seated, and then push the retainer bar back down, and then you can remove the 2 brackets next to it, unless you're adding a different heatsink that requires those. Then you'll leave those on there. You could add your coolers to those, or your heat sinks, and then just remove those. If you're going to go with the stock cooler,
that it comes with, which by the way, they're really nice. You shouldn't have any issues with them, especially if you just want to just do some gaming. You're not looking to overclock anything. I always like to remove the thermal paste that's applied to the fan and add my own. But if you don't have any thermal paste, that's fine. You could skip this process. Your fans already come with some thermal paste pre-applied to them, so you shouldn't have any issues. Make sure that the screws line up together when you're going to plug in your fan. The best way to do it is wherever the IO shield is in the back, is really where I usually have the AMD facing. And you kind of want to you kind of just want to go crisscross when you're screwing them in. You know, just do top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right, or vice versa, just so you can make sure that you can get them in correctly and you won't have any issues where one side is lifting up and the other side is lifting too far down. And that's from there, what you're going to do once you screw them down is you're going to plug in that fan, that cooler, into your CPU header. You'll see it'll say CPU fan. Plug it in is very simple to do. It's almost fail proof because it has kind of like a bracket of some sort where it just lets you just plug it right in. And then from there, you're just going to plug in your RAM. All right, guys. So for the next step here, to put your RAM in, it's going to be depending if you have 4 DIMMs or 2 DIMM slots, right? In this particular one, it has 4 DIMM slots. So you're going to go the second and the fourth one. And the reason why you want to do that is because Ryzen it works best dual channel. Dual channel, you're going to run the second and the 4 DIMM slot. If you have 2 DIMM slots only, it's fine. Just plug them both into your DIMM slots. Just make sure you got enough RAM, even for future proof, that you don't have to go and replace a bunch of RAM. Because if you only have 2 DIMM slots and you put 2 4 gig sticks, in the future you want to go to 16, then you have to replace all your RAM completely. In this particular one, I'm going with 2 4 gig sticks. I have 2 8 gig sticks here, but I'm going to save these for a future build. So for this particular build, we're going to go with 2 8 gig sticks, 3000 megahertz RAM. So take it out of your its case, and you just want to line them up, right? Again, this is another thing that's almost fail proof, and I'm doing it kind of an opposite direction. But here, you can plug it into the second one and the fourth one. Make sure that this here, right here, lines up with the one that's on your DIMM slot. And you just take it in, and then it'll have either 1 or 2 on the side. Just push them down. Make sure you push them down. And then when you push your motherboard in, you're gonna, when you push the RAM in, you're gonna hear. You think that's funny? You're gonna hear 2 clicks, and then do the other one the same, right? Just put them in, and then push them down, and your RAM is perfectly seated into your motherboard. All right, so for the next step is trying to get your motherboard inside of your case. So here, I actually, before I do anything, I always look at the cases that I'm going to be building in, right? This particular one was a neon. It has 2 RGB lights in the front, and that's pretty much what it does. You're always going to see some cables that coming out of it. That's going to be the power, to be able to, your power button. It just plugs into your motherboard, and it just sends it a signal. Turn your motherboard on, HD sound, and you have, just does. That's what all these cables are for. Just plugs into your motherboard. But you're gonna want. They come with these bags inside of them that has all of your, stuff necessary for your case. However, the reason I like to examine the case before I do any build is, one, I want to make sure that how tight is that build inside? If it's really, really tight, what is the cable management going to look like? Because cable management is super important. It doesn't necessarily affect so much performance. Some could say if it's a tight build, cable everywhere, airflow, it's not going to affect your performance. It just makes it look really bad if there's bad cable management. So inspect your case and see where you're going to run these cables. Am I going to run it behind? Is there space to be able to run it behind? Is there enough length that I can actually bring it behind the chassis and run it to the motherboard underneath? The cool thing about this one is the power supply goes down here, so it's not really, you can't really see it. But every case is built different. Sometimes you have cases where there's you can see your power supply on the bottom or on the top, so you just got to get real creative and make sure you know where you're going to be running those cables. Other than that, it's very simple. Your motherboard, there's different form factors. So you have minis, ITXs, ATXs, right? And depending on the motherboard, you want to get a chassis that is designed for your motherboard. So best way to do it, a bigger case can fit any motherboard, but a smaller case can't fit every motherboard, right? It's the easiest way to do it. But also, you don't want this gigantic case with a mini, ITX motherboard in there, because it looks really bad. So just match the case, man. Match the hatch, make it look good. In this particular case, it's a B450M, so it's going to be a MATX case, and I got the case for it. And you'll see some standoffs in here, which will be, sometimes they have the standoffs, sometimes they don't, but you'll see this one already has the standoffs installed in there. Some of them, not all of them. And if they don't, it's okay, because your bag has extra standoffs, and you're gonna match the standoffs going to your case, and then your motherboard goes on top of the standoffs, and you screw on your motherboard into each one of those standoffs. And that's the easiest way to describe it. So now that you figured out how you're gonna run the cable, as you see here, I just spent some time. This case, I didn't want to get into a review of it, but whatever you do, don't buy this case. This case is already a pain. I'm already seeing it. I had to run the cables down, back and through the inside, and I still don't know where I'm gonna put the where I'm gonna run the audio cable through, because it's not long enough to actually run it underneath where the power supply is and back out. And down here, there's no real place to pull it out of. So I could either modify this case, right? I cut into it, or I can run it down in between here somewhere and out. So I haven't figured that part out yet, but it looks good. It's just pretty much a pain of a case to actually work with. So I didn't mean to digress there, but I did. I kind of had to just kind of give it to you straight, because it's pretty frustrating. Other than that, the case is pretty nice. It just doesn't give you a lot of options for cable management on it, which is not really good. So once you figure out where you're going to run your cables through, then you want to install your IO shield, right? That comes with your motherboard. So that's easy. You're just going to, it's going to go on the back of your motherboard here, and you're going to take it out of its back and line it up with your motherboard. So this one, I know it's going to be, obviously the ports face down. So just push it in. It's not really hard to do. It's actually pretty simple. I'm doing it with the wrong hand. So, and you just kind of push it in there and make sure it clicks in. I've never used this hand. Put them in. There we go. One side. Let's get in there good. All right. And once it's in there, it's good. That's your IO shield. That's going to be for your motherboard. It just kind of makes it look a lot nicer. It gives it a good shield on it. And now we have to figure out where we're going to run the 6-pin power cable, right? So once you install your motherboard, here's a quick tip. Many times this happened to me when I'm doing PC builds. Before you install your motherboard, verify the type of case that you have. Is there an extra slot up here that lets you run your cable from the back and right over it on the side of it? If there's not, you got to get real creative, because once you plug your motherboard in, if you didn't figure out where you're going to run your cable, you're going to run it right through the middle of that motherboard, and it looks horrible. You don't want to do that. You always want to find a way around and keep all the cables behind in the back over here, right? So once you figure out where you're going to run it, go ahead and install your motherboard into your case here, and I'm going to do that now as well. For your motherboard, I had to rearrange on this. All right, guys, so I finally got it in there. What you want to do is, so it's got to look something like this, right? Don't worry about that cable. You adjust that later. So remember those standoffs we were talking about? Well, you just line up your motherboard with the IO shield, put it through the IO port here, the shield, and there's screws here, here. There's 8 in total for a B450M, and you line them up on the standoffs and you just screw them in. So once it's in there, now your motherboard is secured into your case, and you should have no issues. It's all really just plug and play at that point. Again, just double check. I had to run this power supply. I don't like this case. I'm never going to build on this case again. But I had to run the power supply back through here, kind of modify the case a little bit in the back. If when you buy it, if you're thinking about a case, you haven't bought a case yet, think about like NZXT. Those are really good cases, easy cable management. They're just a little pricier. But look for cases that you see power supply entry points on the top, or at least on the right, so it makes it a lot easier. But nonetheless, you can still make it happen. You just got to get a little bit creative. And once your motherboard's in, then you want to securely, you want to put your power supply in, right? So here's the power supply here. So for your power supply, wherever your fan is, wherever the mesh is for the exhaust, right? Because that's really what you need to think about, is where the exhaust is going to be. Excuse me, this is the exhaust here. Where's that fan going to be drawn from, right? So it's going to be blowing air out of here, which is the back of the case, and 99.99999% of the time, really, you'll see on the bottom it'll be like a mesh or airflow where it can let it draw the air out and then pull it out of the exhaust. Don't ever flip it on the other side, because you're going to be sending, you're going to be pulling air from somewhere else. So, and this one is facing down. So just install your power supply wherever it goes, really. In this case, on this build, it goes on the bottom down here. Let me see if I can show you what I mean. And you'll see here, and then you just screw it on 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, before, let's talk about also case management, understanding your case. If I would have screwed that power supply in, I would have had to unscrew it, because down here is where the hard drive's going to go. So I'd have to pull it back out. In my particular case, I got to pull the power supply out and put the hard drive in its tray, and then I could slide it in. Either way, sometimes hard drives will be up here or on the side, or SSDs, and if you're not going with a hard drive, then just skip to my next part. But if you have a hard drive, see where the hard drive tray is. Sometimes they're facing directly out of the computer, which is easy, but in this particular case, it's facing on the inside. I got to install a hard drive first. So the hard drive's simple. Just slide it into the tray. They'll have 2 screws on the side, and then screw it, where it could slide, in and out. Sometimes they have a slate tray. Then you just put your hard drive right on it, put 1 screw in it, and slide it right inside of it. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and install the hard drive into this one now. All right, guys, so I'm gonna do it in front of you just so you know some of the things you might run into depending on the case you have. So this particular build, just so you can get a better view of what's happening, the SD's mounted down under here, right? So it's a pretty tight fit, and then the HDs go up here. This could have 2 SDs and supposedly 3 hard drives. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mount the solid state drive first down here, and then the hard drive just slides on top up here. And this is just how we're gonna have to do this build. So I'm gonna try to give you the best visual possible. Don't know if it's gonna be perfect, but I'm gonna give it my best attempt for you. And take it easy. This is the part that sometimes you have to get creative. So we know it's got to come screwed out here. And where are the screws? Right here. So there's 4 little ones here. We're going to use the screws that come with it, which are these. Let me just verify. So let's give it a shot. Let's plug it in, plug and play, and get this thing up and running. It'd be nice if you had an assistant. My little assistant, my little one, decided he wanted to go watch TV, so I'm kind of by myself. If not, I would have had him hold it on one end. But it's not a big deal. We'll get it together. So, go ahead. Once you know where you're going to mount that SD, can you see here? No. So this one's being mounted. This was being mounted down here where you can see SD. So I'm going to get the screws that's designed for it, and then just put your tighten your screws. Again, remember, it's going to be different. Every case is different. Some cases are much better than others, but not this one. I had to buy the hardest case to work on to show you guys, how to do a PC. Lesson learned. Next time I do a how-to build a PC step by step, I'm gonna find a much easier case to work with, because sometimes you got to get creative. But at the same time, I'm kind of glad I chose this one. It's the best way to show you guys, because sometimes people text me or send me a DM and just off worry, like, what do I do with this case? And you know, especially if there's first time doing a build, and then they get frustrated and end up running the cables through the front, you know, and it just looks hideous. It's not, oh, I just lost a screw. It looks hideous, and it's not the way you want to go. You know, you really want to take your time on your build, study it, you know, even if it takes you, even if you don't get started right away, really look at that case, you know, and envision what you want your build to look like, because ultimately it's what you're going to be playing on, and that's what you want. All right, so the SD's mounted inside of the case. Perfect. We got the SD mounted. Let's go ahead and install the hard drive in it. I'm going to go ahead and install the SATA cables to it as well, just so you know what I mean by that. You have a couple SATA cables that plug into your hard drive and your SD, right? Unless you have an M.2, then you don't need anything. It plugs right into your motherboard. But this is what I mean. You're gonna have one that goes from your power supply, which is this one. I'll give you a better gander at it. This one, and then you have one that goes from a smaller one, which is one like this, and this goes from your hard drive. This little one goes from your hard drive to your motherboard, and I'll show you where you plug those in. So just to be a little bit more specific, right? So you have a hard drive or an SSD. We're not talking about an M.2. So here's a hard drive, right? You'll see two ports. Two SATA cable ports, right? There's a bigger one and a smaller one. One that goes from the power supply, and then this one that goes from here to your motherboard. So I'll show you. You take one from your power supply, and you plug it into here, right? Just like that. And that's taking power from the power supply to your hard drive to power it up. And the other one is gonna go from here. This is a smaller one, and they line up. Don't worry, they lines up. There's no way you could put them in correctly. The other one goes from here, and this cable plugs into one of the SATA ports in your motherboard. 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? Or sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. One of the SATA ports inside the motherboard on the side, on the right. And then this is how you're going to get, you're gonna be able to store information that way through your SATA cables. The same thing with the solid state drive. If you're using one, they're just a little bit smaller, same concept. Power supply, SATA goes to the hard drives to power it up, and then smaller one from the drive to the motherboard to send that signal, or to send the data, really. All right. I'm gonna install it now. All right, guys, so I got it all situated here. I'm actually just now gonna screw in the power supply. Haven't plugged anything into the motherboard quite yet. I'm gonna show you how to do that now. So let's screw in the power supply here. We got really the hardest part for building, at least, set, because after you build, you know, you want to download drivers and update, you know, do all that stuff. All the software is later. We want to get this thing powered on and going. So power supply is plugged in. We're gonna run the 24 pin. This goes into the big part of the motherboard, which is gonna be over here-ish. Somewhere here, right here. Big one goes here, little one goes back in the corner. Sometimes they're up top. So that's what this cable is. You can't get it wrong. For the most part, they're labeled. And then we're gonna see where we're gonna run it. Here you wanna make sure you got, you know, you want it to look good. So play with it. Do you run it down or do you run it above? Let me see if you can see. Yeah, you can see what I'm doing. You want to decide which side you're going to run it on. So for this one, I'm going to run it on top and let it just come down. All right, so once you plug it in there, make sure it's nice and snug, that it clipped onto the side of it. You don't want that having any issues. You want that to be on there really tight and really good. And I'll show you now where that goes. You see here, it's nice and tight right on here. It ain't going anywhere. You can see there's a clip on the side. You ever have to pull out, just squeeze and pull. But make sure both of them are connected in there really good so you don't run into any problems in the future. All right, so what's next? Once you have everything pretty much ready to install, it's time to install the things into your motherboard. So the cables you have, right? Obviously we have our two SATA cables for our hard drives, and then you have the cables from your case to install into your motherboard. you have a couple different cases. You have the case from both the hard drives, the SSD and the HDD. Those cases go into the SATA ports. Then you have a USB 3.0, your other USB port, HD audio, and your front panel cables. So in terms of the front panel cables, you have to refer to your motherboard because each one is different. So your power, negative, positive, your LEDs, negative, positive, those have to go on specific pins. So look at your motherboard manual and you'll see which pin they go into. In this particular case, that's right here. And each one's gonna be a little bit different. The HD audio, for the most part, is always situated similarly to the left of the motherboards, but it can be different, right? And then just take a look at where it goes and plug one in, right? And just continue to plug and play as you go. The USB 3.0, you can't miss it because it's this one right here. Has the blue tip, that's a 3.0. Some of them have an additional USB port onto it, which is something I actually liked about this case, which is pretty cool. Some of them don't, but this one does. So we're gonna go ahead and install this now in its proper place, which you'll see it on the motherboard. It'll say USB 3.0, and you know exactly where it has to go. So this one, I'm gonna run it right through the case, right through here, right at the bottom. And I'm gonna install the 3.0 right here, and then right next to it, the other USB port that has it, which is right next to it, the USB 2. And this one plugs right into here, just as so. All right, so we have our USBs from our front panel and panel set up. So what do we have next? Our panel cables, right? So again, you have to refer to your motherboard for those. There is another USB port cable as well. We're gonna go ahead and plug that one in. You know, I gotta take back. So yes, I don't like this case. I probably won't build with it again. But one neat thing that I do like about it does to have that. It has all the USBs available for it. You know, which is neat. Sometimes you don't see that. So this one, the same thing. I'm gonna run it right through here, and then run it to the other USB port, or excuse me, the USB slot right here. All right, awesome. If you had LEDs, there's going to be a couple extra ones if you're not fully maximizing everything on the board, like LED lights, you know, that you can put like LED strips here. I probably run them up here, or some of them on the bottom. So don't worry too much about those. You have some CPU fans extra, which is the other fan's going to go here, and that CPU, LED CPU is going to go right here. So you'll see some extra stuff on the motherboard if you're not using its full capacity, right? But it's okay. That's perfectly normal. And now we just have to install the cables. The cool thing about this one is it's already labeled. I've done this build enough, so I already know pretty much where they go. Some of them aren't labeled, that you have to refer to your motherboard. Some of the cheaper ones, but you know, some of the good ones have reference on them, so you know exactly what goes where. You're not, you know, having to refer to your motherboard or play a guessing game if you don't have a motherboard. You know, especially if you bought maybe a motherboard off of eBay that was used. But then that's okay, because you could always just draw that information right out of the internet, right? Just go, you know, go to motherboard manual for whichever you're looking for, and you should be fine, you know. Done. So I'm gonna install these real quick. I can't do it from the side, I'm sorry, so I'm gonna do it right here, and get the cables installed here. So we got everything pretty much set up inside the motherboard. There's only one thing missing. That's our graphics card. Where does that go? So that actually is going to go in your PCIe 16, and that's very simple. Typically the motherboard already has that pushed back, and what you're going to do, measure if your case is like these, which a lot of them are. Sometimes you can't really put these back on the cheaper cases, so make sure you know which ones you're going to remove, right? So what you do is you take your graphics card and you just measure where it's going to be. I just have to remove the second one here. So you just take the screws, take the pan off if there's a, you know, and remove it, and then you'll pull this piece off. So I'll do it really quickly here. I've done this in a lot of other builds before too, but I'll just do it here so you can just follow with me, right? So I'm going to take these two screws off. Sometimes they're a little bit different. Again, this is just a very easy to follow. Look at your case, and it might be just slide or unscrew and then slide off, but nonetheless it's going to be the same exact concept on your build, depending on the case that you have, but most of them are going to be just like this, right? Save this part because you want to screw that back on, and then I'm going to remove this one right here for this case, and this graphics card, it goes here. Depending on the graphics card you have, it might be a different one too, right? If it's a thicker card. But that's going to come off here, and what you're going to do is you're going to take your graphics card and you're going to line it up, right? So it's going to go, you're probably call it upside down, but this is where it goes, right side up, right? Where the fans are facing down, and you're going to just slide it in, and you're going to push it in just like that, and you're going to hear a click in the back. So here, most of them, you want to screw it in here, so it'll hold it into that, it'll keep it tight, and it's not going to be moving around. All right, and once you have your graphics card put into its proper place, you want to see the type of pin connection that it has. Now, there's some graphics cards that are, single fan that actually don't take power, right? It draws the power from the motherboard. Some of the better ones, some of the newer ones, some of the older ones that just draw a lot of power, they could have a 6-pin, they could have an 8-pin. So just look at the one that you have here, right? So this is an 8-pin, and you want to take your PCI. In this case, I have it right here. It's 8. This one comes with dual, just in case you have 2 8-pins or 6 and a 4, whatever. And then you run it through your board, and then you're going to take your power. You're going to run it through your computer. So for this one here, I'm actually going to run it right through the same, right under. And you connect it to your graphics card. And it has a clip on it too. And then you can play around with the cable management later, right? Right now we just want to make sure that it's clipped in, it's set up, because cable management, we're going to take care of all that right now. We're not going to see any of this here. So now that it's all built, it's all put together, the PC's actually built now. Now it's time to do cable management, right? So if you've been running your cables the right way on any build that you're doing, cable management is pretty much set. Now it's just time to use little zip ties, just keep it all together so everything just comes together. Cables are out of the way, you draw them back nice and tight, and it just looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and do some cable management here, and then I'll show you the final result. So this is what it looks like here. Graphics cards put in pretty good. Everything's set up. The only thing I'm missing here is a fan. It didn't come with a back fan, but it's okay, I guess. So I'm going to order it's an 80mm fan. Probably do LED lights, because this has 3 white LED lights here in the front, so I might just match that for the back, give it a clean look, especially with the black RAM. And it should look pretty good. I mean, the build came out good. I'm happy with it. The only thing is I just don't really like this case. Some of the places for the wire, cable management, I'm not really too happy about. And but other than that, I'm happy with the build. It came out really good. We're gonna plug it in, turn it on, and just see how it games. And but yeah, that's how we do it, guys. This is how to build a PC. Next step to it is plug in your HDMI into your graphics card, plug in the power cord into your power supply, and turn your PC on and install your operating system. So we're going to install Windows on here now. All right, guys, so next step, let's power this thing on. You see a series of lights pop on the motherboard. I mean, for the first time, I didn't even go off, come back on. It's powering up. I might get a display on the system telling me, because I switched the RAM out. I had 16 gigs while I was testing, and I just put 8 gigs in and out. But if not, yeah, reboot and select proper boot device. All right, so we'll go into the BIOS now. It's booting off a USB that I have on there right now, so we're just going to go into the BIOS. To go into the BIOS, when you turn it on, just hit, depends on the one, F2 or delete. So, all right, here we go. We're in the BIOS. Let me give you a good look at what's going on here. So, we have B450, AMD Ryzen 5 1600, and let's go to... All right, guys, so we got a BIOS screen. Very simple. When you see your BIOS screen, I have it actually in the boot sequence the way I want it to, but I'm gonna plug in the USB to install Windows on it, and you gotta go back in and change your boot sequence. But I just wanted to check it and make sure, everything looked pretty good. It's reading everything that we have in it, and I think we're pretty much set. So let's go into the memory settings. The profile's set on right now. Remember, you could disable that, enable that if you remember from the last one. We're gonna leave it enabled at 3000 megahertz. And we're pretty much set up already. We're done. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to exit and close. And we're going to plug in the USB and we're gonna download it onto our 120 gigabyte SSD. Remember, when you plug in your USB, you want to go back and want to turn it back off, go into your BIOS, because obviously you don't have your boot sequence set up right, and you want to make sure that it's set up the way you want it to be. Here's the boot options here. We have 120 gigabyte PNY USB 3.0. We're going to boot it to our USB. We're going to exit and save and exit again. And when it reboots, it should boot back up into Windows. All right, here's our Windows screen. So let's go ahead and install Windows. We're going to go ahead and install it now. All right, and then if you have a product key, go ahead and put your product key in there. And hit next. Go ahead and accept the terms, hit next. Custom Windows, because we want to install it ourselves. So check the drive that you have. Remember, you might not remember the names of your drives. For me, I know it's 120 gigabyte, so I'm gonna go ahead and install it in here. If you have multiple drives, just remember which one you're installing in. This one, I'm installing the 120 gigabyte, and I'm gonna hit next, and we're gonna let it install now. You can see what it's doing here. Alright guys, and this is it. This is what that product should look like. It should take you here to the screen where it says, let's start with the region. So that's pretty much it. That's how you build a PC and get Windows installed on it. Obviously, once you get past that screen and you put your information in, you're going to want to download some of your drivers, right? Graphics card drivers, anything that's going to help increase that performance of your PC. And you know, some of the games that you want. After that, just install a game and start playing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, or at least found it somewhat educational. I know a couple of you guys were asking me to do a PC build, and I hadn't gotten to one, a full build yet. So I was able to get one done, and I hope you guys enjoy it. The last thing that's left on this, I'll show you the finished product. Well, not so much finished for my PC at least. This is what it looks like here. But what's really left is to get a fan over here. And I'm gonna get a 80mm fan for that one. So once I put that fan in, it'll be ready to rock. Guys, it was a pleasure to do this video for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.